Good evening and welcome to Door on Tour, the podcast. This evening we're going to be talking about everything concerning Nottingham Forest as of late, including something about Brennan Johnson, a little bit about Dean Henderson and how De Gea and him not signing the contract might just be holding back the deal a little bit, and also our thoughts ahead of pre-season and transfer targets. But before we get into that, let's announce our guests this evening. So let's first of all start with Rads. Rads, how you doing, my friend? Welcome to the show.
Very good, Joe. Thank you. Yeah, it's a bit boring, really, isn't it, without Forest? But there's still plenty we can be talking about. So, yeah, good.
I think there's been a lot of spinning in this chair at the moment. I've just not really been doing anything, waiting for football to be back. Good to have you on the show, my friend. Steve, how you doing?
Right, Jay, how you doing? Yeah,
I'm
not too
right.
bad. And you, Rads? Yeah, I'm all good.
Good man. Okay, so welcome both of you to the show, and also welcome to all of you joining in the stream at the moment. Make sure if you are joining in, make sure to give us a like and also a comment. Let us know your thoughts on the topics we'll be discussing. And of course, you'll notice that Mr. Door isn't here at the moment. He's currently at work, so he's unable to make this stream, but he's kindly asked me to step in for him to host. So I'm looking forward to talking about the club that we all love for the next hour. I was going to say 90 minutes. I'm getting too used to it now. But let's start off with the main talking point at the moment. Let's start off with Dean Henderson. I would say is one of the main talking points. Forest need a goalkeeper. Ethan Horvath today has been told by Luton that he won't be returning. The club won't be buying him on a permanent basis. So it's evident that we need a goalkeeper. But Steve, I just want to ask you first. Do you think that Ethan Horvath has a place at Forest, whether it be as first choice goalkeeper, which I personally don't think he can be? I don't think he's strong enough for that. But do you think that we should keep him as a second choice? Will he accept that?
Well, I agree with you on the first point. He's not good enough to be number one. That's the first thing. Secondly, the choice of second keeper. Me personally, I'm not just saying he's the Welsh keeper. Wayne Hennessey's a better keeper than Horvath, I think. But then if Horvath was given the second position, even if it is Henderson or not, I would, as a backup, maybe not so bad, but still, it's hard in the Premier League. Like, to have two strong keepers, you need, with that position, you've got to be quite happy to sit on the bench. And if you go through each team in the Premier League, their backup keeper, are they that strong? Because to have really two very strong keepers at a club, you've got to keep them happy, because that keeper knows he's only going to be playing maybe a few League Cup games, an FA Cup game. So I think Horvath, me personally, I would keep Hennessey over Horvath, but Horvath as a backup wouldn't be the worst case scenario. I don't think he's not that bad of a keeper, but definitely not first choice. I agree with you on that first point, Jay. It's definitely not first choice. But that's my opinion on Horvath. Before I let Rads now give his, and I'll tell you my opinion on the whole Henderson saga.
Yeah, so Rads, then, given what Steve has said, what are your thoughts on Horvath? And also, if he was to be sold, what do you feel his value is?
Value, I'm not sure, to be honest, but I'd probably, first and foremost, should he stay at Forest or not? I think it's a strong argument for him to stay, or do we keep Hennessey? So it's something for the club to decide. And I could probably see Horvath leaving. I think most people thought he would probably go to Luton permanently, but obviously that's not going to happen now, which I'm kind of surprised about, to be honest. I don't mind Horvath, only we did see a little bit even at Forest, but particularly at Luton. He was good for them, but he made a few little mistakes here and there. And if you're going to be doing that in the Championship, then with all due respect, can you really trust him in the Premier League if we need him? Not that I don't fully trust Wayne Hennessey either if he had to come and step in. I mean, to be honest, I see Forest signing two goalkeepers. I think, permanently get Henderson in, which I think we all want to see, get over the line. I really want, this deal to be done, the whole De Gea thing. I don't want it to get in the way, or, even if United want to go and get another goalkeeper while we have to wait for Henderson to come in permanently. It's frustrating on our part. So ideally, I'd like to see Henderson come in, and then maybe sign another goalkeeper as a backup. But then again, like we've already been saying, you've got to keep two keepers happy, and it can be difficult. But I don't think we can be in the same situation that we were last year, where, you know, Henderson gets injured and then we're having to call upon another goalkeeper because we don't trust Hennessy. And, you know, I don't know whether it would be right to have Hennessy on the bench as backup if that had to be the case last year. He's technically going to be worse next season because he's older. And if we can't trust Horvath either, it'll be in the same boat. So personally, I think we need to probably get in two keepers, honestly. You know, Henderson and then maybe another goalkeeper, and one of Hennessy or Horvath have to leave. I have a feeling it'll be Horvath personally.
Well, I've always liked the idea of having Hennessy as your third choice keeper. I do think he's a good keeper, but I just don't know if in the Premier League now he can be considered that reliable backup still. Maybe that's just, I don't know if I'm being a bit harsh with that. I think he's got good distribution, you know, his reflexes are okay. But in general, I think we need to look elsewhere for a second choice keeper, and he be more of a, I don't know, not necessarily Scott Carson, because I don't think he's that far down the line, but someone who's a mentor to other keepers and can use his experience to rub off onto other, you know, goalkeepers that come into this club. And when it comes to Dean Henderson, I know there's a lot of people that are now saying they don't think that the Dean Henderson deal is going to happen. I do think it will. The player really wants to join Forest. The personal terms is not a problem. Wages, not a problem. The value, not a problem. At the moment, the only problem is on the Manchester United side, because Man United have got a huge problem. They've not invested in their goalkeeping department, and now they're left with an academy prospect, Tom Heaton. Jack Butland's gone to Rangers, and then Dean Henderson, you know, is there also, and De Gea's going to walk and go to Saudi Arabia or wherever. So United are going to feel the force because of them not investing in this department. They've had De Gea for over 10 years now. And now it's come to the point where he's going to leave. They're going to get no money back for him. They've got their second choice and arguably the best choice in their goalkeeping arrangement not wanting to play for the club. So they're in a real predicament. And we just want Dean Henderson. But at the moment, it's all being held up because you can understand why Manchester United are doing this. They're not going to get rid of Dean Henderson, the best goalkeeper other than De Gea at the club, because they've got to have stability. Even if he doesn't want to play for United, they might not have a choice. But I don't particularly know how it works if a player doesn't want to play for a team or whatever. But has he handed in a formal transfer request? I don't know. But it's a really, really precarious situation at the moment. But I do think that Henderson will sign for Nottingham Forest, but I do think there'll be a delay in the meantime. So whether we'll get to see him play against PSV, you know, in July, I don't know. Frankfurt, I don't know. Maybe the August kind of time. There's going to be a delay, and it's going to take time for United to sign a keeper. And with the way that United have typically done business, it could take quite a while. So let's hope it doesn't take too long. But what are your thoughts on budgets then? If we're talking about maybe another keeper, two goalkeepers, how much can we spend on one position? Because ideally, we're going to need, well, as you guys say, two keepers potentially, a midfielder, maybe a striker, a left-sided forward. So how much money will Forest actually need to spend this season, Steve?
Like you said, it goes on budget and about shipping players out, which I don't know. I know we might get to later about potential in and outs, but in far the goalkeeping department, I think the only thing with goalkeeping, obviously we're going to put our eggs in one basket with Henderson, and with what you've got with backup keepers, you have got the loan or not loan, the free market. You might just pluck someone from somewhere in a free transfer. There might be a youngster out there, an up and comer who wants to learn. I know there's a small mention of a Fulham keeper we've been looking at. I have seen the name mentioned. I forgot his name. He's at Fulham. He's like a 21-year-old. But yeah, it's the goal. How much is Henderson going to cost as well? You know, United. The thing with the keeper is, at least one thing I will say: if it gets dragged out to near the end of the transfer window, at least Henderson's played for us. He knows the system. He can just slot in. Well, my worry is if this drags out, that we play in pre-season friendlies and say it is all Bath or Hennessy in goals, we haven't got that stability, and we need Henderson in quick, so we can get that pattern of play what Cooper wants to bring in and things like that. So it's kind of catch-22 really. But the goalkeeper department, if he costs up to 30 million, that's a bit of a whack then, isn't it, of our budget. But then we need a keeper, like we said right at the beginning of the show. We need a keeper ASAP. It's one of the most important positions on the pitch. Henderson wants to play for us. He wants to join us. I don't think he'll ever play for United ever again. That interview did him no favours, if you agree with him or not. How can he play for them again? You know, and I've heard that Ten Hag wants to look at him, but I don't think if Ten Hag, Henderson does, his heart won't be in it. So for both parties, it's best if he just joins us. I agree with you. United have just not invested in the Gea. They've just unbelievably well, is he going to go on a free as they've run his contract down? That's mental. And only a couple of years ago, Real Madrid were willing to offer a bucket load for him. So for their misfortunes and their mishandling has affected us as well. So the ripple effect, isn't it, on other clubs? It's amazing how a domino effect can affect, can affect other clubs in football. It's crazy now how the football world works, and this could drag on now, like the James Garner thing. That never came forward because they just held back. Next thing, Everton came in and went, "Oh, we'll have him," And so, yeah, hopefully it'll be done soon because I got a funny feeling this is going to just drag on and on and on.
Yeah, and that's the non-ideal situation. As we say, we want it early doors. We need it early doors, really. And the thing is with Forest goalkeepers is I do feel that while Navas was a good goalkeeper and, he made mistakes, but I think he was a good goalkeeper and he came in at a time when we just needed someone. And to have someone with his experience play for Forest and somebody who's won as many Champions Leagues as him, etc., is amazing. But we need a goalkeeper that's a little bit, and if you excuse my language, a bit of a shithouse. That's what we need. We need a goalkeeper that's a shithouse, someone that can get the team riled up. It is a proven fact that Nottingham Forest play better when they've had a harsh tackle made against them. When Joe Worrell slides in and makes an incredible slide tackle. When someone just gives a little kick to Morgan Gibbs-White, like at the Brighton game where Morgan Gibbs-White and I think it might have been in Ciso, or the other lad up front that had a bit of an altercation. But after that, you saw the best of Forest, you saw the best of Gibbs-White, you saw the best of everyone because they fired up. And the thing I liked about Dean Henderson was he's a bit of a showboat. He's a little bit cocky. He's got a bit of an ego. And when things don't go well, you kind of think, oh, that's annoying. But then it's the thing is about him that I really like is the fact that he can get us riled up. He can get us G'd up and motivated for a game. And you need that because as much as it's great to hear fans singing your name, you need someone on your team giving you a bit of shit to really power you forward. And also giving the opposition a hard time as well. So, I know that what people are saying with letting Samba go was a big mistake, but you've got to put that behind you. Yeah. This is the future now, but we can't keep delving on the past because we have to live in the future. And I would love to have Samba here now. And I don't think we'd be having this discussion. As much as I love Dean Henderson, Brice Samba is a class goalkeeper who's going to go very far. He's now the French number 2 goalkeeper. He is going to reach the highest of heights. I'm sure he is. But we've got to put that behind us. Always keep tabs on what he's doing. Congratulate him. He'll always be part of our history and he'll be a massive part of that. But now's the future. And I think the future lies with Dean Henderson for me. And if £20 million is the fee we've got to pay, then let's pay it. Let's pay it early doors and let's just hope United can get this over and done with. Because at the end of the day, I don't think this is Forest's fault that it's taking this long. And people will have their own opinions and say, oh, Forest, why don't you just get it done quicker? But transfer business is so much more complicated than that. And we will never understand the ins and outs of what's going on at the moment. We can just hope that it gets done quickly. So
just a quick point to that, Jay, just to touch on that, is I mentioned the ripple effect, is if United go in for Pickford, Everton then come into play because Everton will only sell if they have a backup. So then there's another side plot. They will only sell to United. All right, then offer us 45. Oh, we got to keep her lined up. So again, that's another thing as well. It's just effect after effect and effect.
Well, there's definitely other clubs that would like him, but we're at the forefront. And whilst we're at the forefront, let's take advantage of that, which I'm sure the club will be working hard to do. So, Rads, that leads me to the final question then on Dean Henderson. Is he worth £20 million?
Yeah, I think he is. I think he showed when he was playing that he was vital, as we were saying. He's got that character to him. Made some very big saves. I know the thing is, he played probably during the toughest period of the season. You know, the bedding in period of all the new players, and I do know some people criticised his distribution, and there was a few times where he could have done better, and maybe that's true. But I think it's fair to say without Henderson, you know, we probably would have been lower than what we were when he got injured, and then Navas came in, and same goes to Navas. You know, when Navas came in, you know, without him, we would have been relegated for sure. So it just shows how important a goalkeeper is, and for that reason, I do feel it is worth spending a bit more money on a player that you know maybe wouldn't spend as much on in other areas potentially. And you know, every area of a football team is important, but I do think not Samba. We'll talk about Samba. I do think Henderson is worth 20 million. I think if we get like 30 plus, it's kind of stretching it a bit, but I'd personally really push for Dino. But like we've been saying, it is going to come down to more United situation than ours, you know, who replaces De Gea. So, yeah, I have a whole feeling it's going to drag on, unfortunately. But it wouldn't be the transfer window if that didn't happen, unfortunately. So, yeah, we just got to go with it.
It wouldn't be our transfer window if it didn't happen, you know. But £20 million as well. Let's take into account all the factors. Manchester United don't have many goalkeepers. It's going to be a factor. United will want to spend a lot this summer. They're going to want a new striker, a new centre-back, a new goalkeeper. They're going to be spending over 150 million easily. He's English. He's I think he's 26, is he? Is he 26? Probably might even be younger than that. I don't know. I think he's 26. Yeah. He's mid-20s. He's young for a keeper. He's got, another 10 plus years until, you know, he thinks about retirement. And for £20 million, get him on a longer contract. I think it's worth it. You've got your English tax in there and every other factor in there. £20 million is worth it. And distribution, of course, is a problem. But, you know, can we make it work? Can Steve Cooper get the best out of him? Can the Forest goalkeeping coaches work on that? Absolutely. And distribution as a looking at his whole game as a goalkeeper, distribution isn't the biggest factor. The shot stopping is the biggest factor, really. Obviously, it helps to have better distribution. And as I say, they can improve on that. But before he got his injury, the most saves outside the top 6. And as you said, slotted right inside of our team, knows the system well, knows Steve Cooper well, knows the players well. And as I mentioned earlier, he knows what this team needs in terms of mentality. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of factors to take into account, but £20 million is not bad at all, really. So I would be definitely in the camp of paying the £20 million, getting it over the line. It's just a case of when we can actually do that. And let's hope it doesn't take too long. So we're going to start answering some of your questions. So do put your questions in the chat if you'd like us to answer them, and we'll get to them. Mark, welcome to the stream. I hope you're doing well. If Pickford is worth 45 million, then Hendo is definitely worth 20 million. Of course, Pickford has got more Premier League experience, that being said. But, yeah, I agree. Henderson younger, England potential there. Even though it's going to be so difficult to become an England keeper with the likes of Ramsdale and Pope there as well. To even be third choice is going to be tough. So Longhead Yeti believes that Cooper will get the best from Henderson in terms of distribution. Russell believes that it's £20 million is a bargain. I believe so as well. Henderson is worth 50 million if Chris Wood's worth 15 million. Let's not go into that. So that's a separate chat. Refer to the last podcast for this. Is Henderson's injury a stumbling block? Maybe. I don't actually know when he's due back from this injury. So who knows when it could be? Is it going to be in time for pre-season? I don't really know. Will United even be able to use him? This is the thing. Will United even be able to use him if De Gea leaves because of his injury? Who knows? Now this question, and I'm going to put it to you, Steve. The last question we'll ask on Dean Henderson here. Does Henderson lack ambition if he wants to come to us? Because he'd be playing in the Champions League with United. But is he even going to be playing? Steve, let me know your thoughts on that.
No, he won't be playing. No, I said earlier, I can't see unless when he done that interview, Ten Hag was Ten Hag in charge. I think he may have just done it before he came in. I'm not sure the timeline, but I can't see Henderson ever playing for United again. I can't see it. I just don't see, unless things simmer down and then they promise him, because the whole thing about it was that he was promised this and that by Solskjaer, never came ahead, and then he was second choice, third choice, and he didn't have game time. I can't see him playing for United again. He wants to come and play regular football with us, and I think United will aim higher than Henderson. That's no disrespect to Henderson. I think if Pickford's their number one target, then they will say we've got England's number one in goals for us. And then if it's not Pickford, they'll go for someone else. I can't see Henderson being the number one at United. I can't even see him playing at all. Like I said earlier in the chat, I think if he stays United, it'd be the worst thing ever, because I think he just go down to third choice. He end up playing reserves. They might even loan him out just to spite us. I could see something like that happening. That's my fear. No, he won't be playing for United. I just can't see it. That interview did Henderson, which was probably his main aim, was to get out of the club. You know,
it was certainly efficient in the way it worked. It was
strong worded. Yeah.
Strong worded.
It was very strong worded, and I remember listening to it on the radio when it came through, and it was like people falling against him, and I was on the camp of he's actually calling the club out. And when you call out Precious United, you don't do that. You can't call United out. And I felt at the time, and maybe because I had my Forest hat on, he was coming to us. Maybe I was biased towards him, but sometimes the players call it out as it was, and he didn't enjoy his time there towards the end of these. So,
and also, I mean, he was made a lot of promises during his time at United, and then he got COVID, so he couldn't be back up to David De Gea, and then it all kind of spiraled off from there. So it's a story of broken promises and now burnt bridges. So I'm in the same camp as you. I don't think he'll play for United again, but he's an option still. He's still their player. He's not a Forest player now. That's how it is. He's not a Forest player at the moment. So
sorry, I can no disrespect to that question. What I would say though is, if he was to stay United, he is staying at the biggest club in the world, or one of. So in that side, you wouldn't. And if he was given promises and it turned out he did stay at them, you could begrudge him at that then, because he is playing Champions League. So on the flip side, yes, in that question, you could see a bit of it. But then you look at him face value, you just can't see him playing for United ever again.
Exactly. Well, it's going to be interesting for Man United, but we're not far off in terms of our situation with goalkeepers either. We've got to invest now, and that is 100% the case. And luckily, Dean Henderson wants to join us, and there is good hope that we can get that deal done. So let's move on to the next topic then. The big topic within the last week has been Brennan Johnson, without a doubt. There's been rumours flying about. I'm sure you've all seen them. And the one thing that we do know is Brentford made a bid, a £30 million bid for Brennan Johnson to sign him on a permanent transfer and bring him over to the G-Tech Stadium over in London and play under Thomas Frank. But the value, or the bid that they made, £30 million, Forest described as derisory and insulting. And I think that albeit, very strongly worded statement by the club, is correct. There's a lot of factors you've got to take into account when it comes to Brennan Johnson. The fact that he has, for the last 2 seasons, scored over 20% of Forest goals, and over 20% goal contributions, obviously. And in his first season, scored 8 goals, 3 assists, and he's been played out of position for the majority of the time. He's 22, bags full of potential, and he means a lot to us. His value to us is huge. And if other players in the market, such as Anthony Gordon, who just plays on the opposite side, can sell for £45 million, and another statistic that you'll find interesting is, and Rads, I'm going to come to you in a minute, that Brennan Johnson has more goal contributions this season than Anthony Gordon does in the last 2 Premier League seasons. Gordon sold for £45 million, and goals and assists aren't everything, by the way. So, I'm not saying and I'm not having a go at Gordon because I think he's a good player. But if Gordon can sell for £45 million, why are people so upset at the idea that Brennan Johnson could sell for £45 million or more? I don't want to see Brennan Johnson leaving this year. I think we should keep the core of the squad together. But at some point, if an offer came in, the player wanted to go and the club wanted to sell, why on earth shouldn't we demand more than 45 million? Rads, what do you think?
I mean, I agree with what you're saying. First and foremost, I think he's worth a lot more than what Brentford have bid. I think the reason why I think if he was to go to Brentford would be the most stupidest reason is that I don't think it's the right time for him to leave the club. You know, I think it is inevitable that he will leave us at some point. And unfortunately, I think that doesn't really matter what league we're in. I just think he is just that kind of player. And, you know, we all want to see him stay for as long as possible, get the most out of him that we possibly can. So for that reason, if we were to lose him this year, we need to get as much as possible for him. And even though he's only had 1 year in the Premier League, I think just a simple matter of the fact that he's gone from League One to the Championship to the Premier in 3 straight seasons, a Wales international. There's not many players that can rise that quickly and make it look so easy. And, you know, his goals were so important last year. I think, you know, everyone was talking about, and rightly so, for Lee Pay and Gibbs White as player of the year. Not everyone was going to Brennan, but really without Brennan, we probably would have finished lower than where we did. So he's crucial to us. And I think a massive thing going in our favour is I just don't think Brennan wants to leave the club either. Like, if it was Arsenal or City or someone, you could understand why he may want to leave because it is unfortunately for us, it is an upgrade. But to Brentford, I've got a lot of respect for Brentford. They're a well-run club. They've got some good players in there, but I personally don't think it's much of an upgrade for him. I don't think it's the right move. And I know Villa are interested in him as well, apparently, and that would make a bit more sense. But personally, and I'm maybe being a bit biased, I just don't think it's the right time for Brennan to leave us. And if we do, whether it's this year or next year, I think we should be demanding quite a lot. 50 million plus, which sounds a lot, but I think he's that important, and I think he's got that much of a future ahead of him. He's crucial to us, so I don't see why we shouldn't. And as you say with Anthony Gordon, if he scored, he's got more stats than Gordon. I don't think he's any worse or better. I'd probably say I'd pick Brennan over Gordon personally. So there's no reason why we shouldn't demand that much money for him, in my opinion.
Well, he's obviously, there's a lot of factors to take into account. And most of all, I don't think that he wants to leave. I mean, I don't know, but I doubt that he wants to leave. Obviously, Forest have stayed up. He's played a key part in that. And it's also important to remember, I'm just going to mention 3 games. 3 games. The Leeds win, the Leicester at home win, and the Everton draw. If you take Brennan Johnson's goals out of all of those games, we would lose out on 7 points. How many points were Leeds and Leicester relegated on? It was around the 30 mark, wasn't it? It was around that kind of mark.
Yeah.
We could have been relegated if he didn't score those goals in those 3 games. That's scary, right? And that's why when people say, oh, yeah, but, there's some people that will still be on his back now. There's still people on his back and will say, yeah, but what, he's only scored 8 goals or whatever, or he hasn't done that much. Take away those 7 points. Where are we as a team? We're in a lot of trouble. So that's why when I say, what is his value to us? That's what matters. Because at the end of the day, the market, I don't think anybody knows what a real value of a football player is. I don't think there is a set value. I think it's whatever we value him at, and if another club's willing to pay that. So, Steve, let's hear your thoughts on that.
So my overall opinion on all this with Brennan is, first of all, the 30 million is just laughable. That's, like you said about Gordon, 45. Gibbs White came to us at 42 million, which over time it will be. But 30 million is a slap in the face, really. That's just, are they testing the water? Maybe are they just trying to get a reaction out of us to turn our heads? Maybe turn Johnson's head and settle him. That's the way football works. Like Rad said, the Villa one to me makes more sense because they got European football as an enticement, and obviously the attachment area being still in the Midlands. For Johnson, still a young lad moving to London, might mean a lot. Might be too much for him at a young age. We don't know what kind of lad he is in that sense. But that's the first thing I would say. The second thing is, and I've said this on this show a few times with Johnson, right? One day he will leave. But what I want for the lad is, with good attention, is to go to a team where he's a regular player. He is ripping it up, and that could be in the Champions League, Europa League. Maybe he'd do it for us one day. We could get Europa League and he's still with us. Who knows? Football's a stranger thing, right? Stranger things have happened. But on the flip side, if he does go to a top side, I want him to be hitting the ground running. I don't want him to be sitting on the bench. Lads, how many times have we seen a player leave a club, right, for big money, sit on the bench, being a bench warmer, then get loaned out, or just get lost in the shuffle, just get lost in the squad, being a squad member? And you think, what a waste of talent that is. I don't want that for Johnson. I want him to go to, if he was to leave us, which he will one day, go to a team. He's been valued. He's been looked after. He gets regular football, and he's, justifying the big. Like, I agree with Rads. I think we have to get about 50 for him, 45 to 50. And if we were to go lower, it'd have to be an exchange of a player, and we have to have backup as well. Because you are right, Jay. Take them goals out. That Everton game sticks out because he dragged us through that game.
He did.
We should have never have drew that game. In my opinion, no disrespect to Everton, but that was a game we should have won. We all agree on Forest fans. We went into that game, 3 points is a must. And we almost lost that. Dyche ball almost done us. And Johnson came up with two moments of magic in that game. So these fans who say Johnson, he did it, just remember, that's a really good point you made. Some of these goals he scored. Because he is an outlet for us as well. I know we were sitting on a bench a few times towards the end of the season, and some people are throwing up dilemmas now about, can him and Gibbs White play in the same team? That's for another day, another discussion maybe. But that aside, I think, we got to, I want him to stay at least for another 2 years, I'd say, get another 2 years out of him. And then if a big team come in with a big offer, but make sure the club have to have backup. And if we sell him, if we need to replace him, if we're still in the Premier League, because no doubt if we get relegated at any point, he'll go like that. We need backup. We need to get, not like for like, because Johnson, I think, like Raz just said, the rise he's had from League One, Championship, international football, it's madness. He's only 22. We forget it, and he's still 22. It's uncanny. And when we talk about Johnson, some people swear he's 29, 30-year-old. He's only 22. He's got years left in front of him. And he's done so much. He's done so much. I just hope he's not burning himself out, because he's had so much pressure on him for the last couple of years. We've put so much on him as fans, to see us through games and help us through games. And because if you remember, if you go back to the playoff game last year in the final, he did nothing. Johnson hardly did nothing in that game. Because that game was a blur anyway. But if you rewatch that game back, Johnson didn't do a lot. But then, like you said, Jay, them key games, you got to remember them other key games, which he did a lot for us. So it's for me, we got to get about 50 mil for him, because he's our main asset. He's our money maker. If we were to go down the route of we need money back off a player.
And also, if I'm guessing we're going to go to a back four, he will get used in his right position, pardon the pun, the right hand side position, right winger, which is where he performs best. I think what we've got to do is, we're in a position where financially, well, as far as I'm aware, we don't need to sell him. The teams that are trying to buy him aren't that much higher than us in terms of status, in terms of history, certainly not. And we, as a club, actually hold cards. We hold all the cards, really. It's our choice. And that's why I don't think Forest will sell. I think that Forest will keep him this season, definitely. And then, next season may be different. Depends on where we are in terms of the league and what our ambitions are. But in the second season, it's all about keeping your key players together. And Brennan's been Forest through and through all of his life. from the moment he was born. You know what I mean? And his dad involved him in that culture, being a Forest player. And now he's taken the baton and gone and played for Forest himself and done incredibly as well. So there's going to be clubs that are interested in him. There's going to be your Villas. There's going to be your Brentfords. And I'm sure that Newcastle will probably, now they've brought Anthony Gordon, maybe not care as much. But I'm sure that they'll still be watching from afar and they'll think about it, because Brentford have been trying to get, Brennan Johnson for the last 2.5, 3 years now. They've got serious interest in him, and fair play, because they've been trying to get him for so long. But we don't want to sell him. We didn't want to sell him then, and we don't want to sell him now. That is the statement from the club, and we have to keep him. We've got to keep those goals, and we've got to play him in his right position. Because if you had some really good midfield quality, I think you're going to get the best out of our attacking segment of the field. So, Rads, yeah.
Sorry, Jay. Just a quick one. I think, Jay, if he was ever to leave, we all as Forest fans would have to agree that yes, it's the right move for Johnson. I think that's the way we look at it. If it's a move that makes sense, I think we'd all on the fence of yes, we understand why he's going to that club. Like you said about no disrespect to Brentford, we don't see that as a step up. The Villa factor, or maybe a Brighton factor with the European football and the way they are going up the league, maybe understand. For him to leave to a club where you go, yes, I understand that. Not to go to a club, you go in, scratch your head, going, that move doesn't make any sense. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I actually, despite how their admin was on social media and how the fans are, I actually think Brentford are a really good club. And they don't have a lot of history, that's right, but they're on an upwards trajectory. So, they are a good club, Brentford. And I know that we're going to say, we're going to try and say as much as we can because we don't want him to go there. Brentford are a good team. Their rise has been brilliant, by the way. They were in League One a few years ago, and now look at them doing really well in the Premier League. And they're going to, I'm sure, try and push for Europe next season. It was just it was just a very difficult league this year. It was so competitive. So it was difficult for them, but they've done all right. And you can see why they'd be interested in a player like Brennan. But Rads, let's have a think then. Brennan Johnson, what do you see his future being at Forest? Do you think he'll stay for another 2 years, 1 year? What do you think it will be?
I agree with what you're saying. I think he'll stay another year at least. Like we've been saying this whole time, I think it is inevitable that he will eventually leave. Unfortunately for us, to go to a bigger club. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of what I want to happen and what I think will happen. I think he will stay, to be honest, and I think I just think it's best for him as well, more than anything. And like we've been saying, the clubs that are coming in for him, I think Villa being in Europe could be a factor. But I wouldn't say Villa are much bigger than Forest. I think they're about the same. Maybe the size of the club doesn't matter so much. I suppose
Paul's going to get some comments in the section and below,
I think it's more status. I don't want to wind anyone up. But yeah, personally, I just think he'll stay another year. But like we said, I think it's inevitable he will do. And if he does do, and when he does do, I think we need to get as much money as possible for him. Because like I've been making very clear, his goals are key. As you said, those 7 points just from those 3 games kept us in the league. You take them away, we wouldn't be where we are currently. So he's a very, very important asset. He's only going to get stronger. It's going to be weird for him to stay in the same league for another year, isn't it? Not go up a league. And this is where he belongs. So hopefully for us, he stays at Forest in this league instead of going elsewhere. But I just want to see us keep him for as long as possible, get the best out of him for as long as possible, really.
Well, that's it. And don't believe everything you read on the internet is another thing I'll say. There's a lot of rumours going around. Check the account who's putting it, because some Brentford fans have been making up fake rumours about Brennan Johnson and meetings in London or whatever. Just carry on. Let's all just think about what he's going to do for us next season. He's going to be a Forest player next season. And I hope that he's a Forest player for as long as we can have him for, really. So a special talent and also an example of a brilliant product of Forest Academy. That's so fair play to Gary Brazil and the team in the academy for bringing someone like him through the ranks. And he's probably the most valuable academy prospect that Nottingham Forest has ever had. So in terms of value. So let's just think about what he's going to do for us next season. And that leads me to my final question on this. And I just want a quick fire answer from you both. Steve, how many goals do you think that Brennan Johnson is going to get in the upcoming season?
11.
Oh, okay.
I think he'll break double figures this year.
Okay. Well, okay, that's good
Is
guess.
that overall or is that Premier League?
Premier League goals.
All right, 11.
Okay, Rads, what do you think?
Yeah, it's interesting you say overall, because if it was overall, I probably would say a bit more than 11, but I'd probably go, let's be different. I'll say 12 goals for Brennan this year. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to go and put I'm going to go 13. I'm going to go 13. I'm hoping that is a lucky number rather than an unlucky number. So 13 goals for Brennan Johnson this season in the Premier League, I think. It'll be interesting to see if he can do that or not.
Can I just say, though, did you see his assist for Wales the other day?
No, I didn't know.
If he can, well, which we know he can, but them assists next season, and we got Taiwo now hitting the ground running. If he can get, if you watch that goal, Dan James scored it, but the assist, that's Johnson at his best. Down the wing, right to the back, low pass, right to the back stick, and then Dan James followed up and scored. So, yeah, we need Johnson out in the wing, and I think an assist count will go higher as well. Because sometimes we, like you touched on earlier, he does some, and he got messed about as well in the game the other day. He got moved from the right to the left, then down the middle, and he was all over the shop. I think with Johnson, you just got to keep him out wide. I think he's a winger outright. That's why we play him anyway.
I think, yeah, we spoke about it in the pre-chat about Rob Page and how he plays Brennan Johnson at Wales.
Yeah,
I don't understand the tactics really behind his setup at Wales, which is sad, really, because Wales have got some good players, actually, to be fair, and they're a good side. But you've got to play him in one position, as you say, and right wing is his best position. So that's what we think about Brennan Johnson and how many goals he's going to get. So I've said 13. It sees that Davey said 13. I haven't copied you. 13, and then the lads have said 11. So this brings us on to the next part then, about what players we think are going to leave and how many we think are going to leave. Thank you, Trevor Francis Tracksuit, for this question. Rads, let's start with you then. Nottingham Forest, they're going to have outgoings this season. If they don't have outgoings, I'd be really surprised. How many do you think are going to go? Can you name them and why?
I think there'll be quite a few going out, to be honest. I certainly don't want to see anything like last summer in terms of incomings. I don't think it will be. I think we really need to see maybe 6 or maybe 7 players coming in. So basing it off that, you'd probably say about the same going out, roughly. I mean, the obvious one for me is Shelby. We want to see Shelby leave. I'm sure he is good in him somewhere, but he just hasn't suited Nottingham Forest, unfortunately for him. Even though I'm being sentimental here, players like Cook, I think, will leave. I think it's been reported that he probably will leave as well. For the good of his career, is probably the right thing to do. Maybe a loan would be good for someone like Surridge, maybe. Maybe he'll want to go out the door permanently just to, really find a permanent home. I think most championship clubs could take Surridge and do a good job. Could see someone like Dennis possibly leaving and Freuler. I think those two, they're not, I wouldn't be bothered if they stayed, but I do think they are sellable assets. Players that have been up and down. Unfortunately for them, probably more down than up. And it's kind of tough to call with that. But I think the fact that you can still probably get some good money for both of them is really good when they haven't been quite what we thought they would be. I mean, even though he's signed permanently for us, I don't see him leaving. But I think a lot of Forest fans would want Wood to be moved on. But I don't think it will happen now. I've just signed him. So I think we've got to prepare for life with Wood for at least, the first half of the season.
He's out of contract in the summer as well.
Yeah, there's that as well. So it's not like he signed a 3-year deal or anything. I mean, I think there's surely some others that could be leaving as well or loaned out. But I'd probably say, I mean, having said that, actually, it's just come to mind that all the players that have been out on loan, like Panzo and Larea and Hader and Fauna and players like that, I think all of them should probably be moved on. I mean, it's difficult, really. If we're winning the championship, players like Panzo might be useful, but I don't think he's going to get a looking, honestly. Someone's just put in the comments, actually, Mbiso and Horvath. I agree with that as well. So, yeah, I think there's a fair few players that need to be moved on, to be honest, for the good of their careers. Sellable assets there as well. I don't necessarily think we need to replace them all because I think the squad is big, The 30-odd players we signed and then the ones that are already there, it's a big squad. So I think we need to trim it a bit and hopefully get some good money for some of them players as well.
Interesting. So I think there's going to have to be over 10 outgoings this season. And I'm interested to see Scott McKenna on that list. And Steve, I know you're a big fan of Scott McKenna, and so am I, actually. I really like Scott McKenna. And I'd be keen to see him stay. But obviously there's an argument for getting a more pacey centre-back, and someone perhaps a bit younger. But for me, other than the Bournemouth game where it was a bit of a dodgy pass, Scott McKenna actually hasn't stepped out of line many times. What are your thoughts? Would you keep him?
Oh, 100% yes. Yeah, I'm a massive fan of McKenna. Like, you just picked up one bad example of a bad game, and you could probably count on a couple of fingers how many bad games he's had in, the 3 years he's been with us. When he plays, you don't have that fear that you can't see a mistake in him. I know I got my McKenna head on you, but the guy is just, to me, he's just a beast at the back. I'd love to see him and Felipe, and maybe if you're playing a back three, I think if you go with Worrell, any combination, but if McKenna's in there, he's just got that presence. He's reading of the game. Yes, he does lack a bit of pace, but then you can't always be can't be spoiled. You can't have three pacey centre backs. You're always going to have. Look at Fulham; they got an athletic back four, but Tim Ream is old. So you always got to have a bit of presence at the back as well. McKenna's still not. He's not young, but he's not old. He's in his mid-20s as well. So he's not a spring chicken, but then he's not a really old head. So I'd definitely keep him. I know we've been linked with this Greek ex-Arsenal player, which is a lot of, like, Jay, I've seen a lot of your tweets about his stats, which are impressive. I can't remember a lot of him from Arsenal. I know Arsenal were going through a transition at the time, so maybe that's why I didn't really keep track of him. But yeah, I would definitely keep McKenna. Obviously, Steve Cook is going, so there's a gap there. But yeah, definitely keep him. I think, like I say, he's Mr. Reliable. If he was on the bench, if he came on, you just wouldn't fear, would you? You wouldn't think, oh no, he's coming on. That's the thing. I'm sure there's people out there who don't like him, but then I'm sure there's a lot more people who'd rather him in the team or not. So, because to me, he's one of our best signings in the last 5 to 6 years, in my opinion. He is, like I said, he's the only other bad game I remember he had was when we lost 4-0 at home to Fulham, when Mitrovic made a mockery of him, and Mitrovic last season made a mockery of a lot of centre-half. So that game, I didn't really look at McKenna and go, oh, he needs to get out of the team. I just felt sorry for him because he got torn apart. And after the game after that, he just kicked on and the rest is history, So
it's a tough debate. For £6 million, I think you've got a brilliant player in McKenna. But obviously there's arguments for moving forward and, looking at more pacey centre-backs. And there is, of course, always going to be that argument for any player. And I think it's good, actually, within the Premier League to have a reason for a player to push forward and to want to work that bit harder. Because at the end of the day, no player in this team should be comfortable that they're getting first-team football every week. If that is the case, then there's a big problem. And that's why I think we need to add quality and depth, and especially in the midfield, because at the end of the day, Mangala and Yates can't become comfortable in their positions. I spoke about it on Twitter earlier, looking at the likes of Baptiste Mendy, who plays in France, potential, alternative. There's not a lot of technicality within our defensive midfield ranks, which is not the biggest concern. But at the moment, we're relying on Ryan Yates to make pretty much all of the tackles and interceptions, and Mangala to kind of spray out passes a little bit. You need someone who's a little bit more all-round and has a bit more progression to their game in some way. The likes of Tyler Adams would be my idea of a player that could join, but £40 million just seems a ridiculous amount of money. So, Rads, what is there a player that you've thought about, if you could, signing for Forest? And what kind of position do you think Forest need to strengthen him in particular?
Ooh, if I'm honest, I've not really thought of many options. Just to myself, it's mainly just the ones we're linked with. You mentioned there Tyler Adams. I would take him, honestly. I think it would be a good option. But like we said, the price tag, I think, is a big stumbling block. I don't think he's worth 40 million. Only for sure we need a defensive midfielder. We've got Yates and Danilo and Mangala. Great midfield there. But I think it's more strength in depth with midfield that's the issue. We saw, again, Freuler did great for Switzerland the other day, but he doesn't do anything for Forest. So I don't think we can really count on him, unfortunately. I think Kuata did well last season, but I think you let's be real, you can do better. And more than anything for him, it's kind of harsh on him. But, he's only going to get older, isn't he? I think he's 33. So maybe we could upgrade him there. And obviously O'Brien, I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens with him. I could see him being moved on or loaned out. I don't think he's quite what Cooper wants. Maybe it's not what O'Brien wants, unfortunately, which is a shame because he did very well when he first came on the scene for us. For me, midfield, more than anything, it's strength in depth is what we need. I think we definitely need to get in a striker. We saw just how important Tyro was. If we don't have Tyro, which again we've also seen, unfortunately, without Tyro, we lack that number 9, that bully up front. And for a bit we're relying on Ayew and Wood and Surridge, and no disrespect to them, but they're nowhere near the level of Tyro, unfortunately, and not even the similar kind of player either, unfortunately for them. So personally, I think we should be getting those two areas, and obviously, like we say, goalkeeper I think is important. Sort out the left back situation. If we can't get Lodi, I know we're linked with this Augusto guy from Monza. Don't know a great deal about him. And I've seen Maranakis has bought Monza, so maybe he's bought Monza just to make that negotiation easier, just to buy a single player. That would be classic Maranakis, I suppose. But those are the areas I'd probably say. Maybe another, attacking player as well to maybe upgrade someone like Dennis, and ultimately Lingard's left. So I think maybe that could be an area we could improve. But ultimately, I don't want us to go mad like we did last year. I don't think we will go down that road. But we certainly need 5 or 6 players in, I'd say. And then, like we say, there's a lot of dead wood that I think we can be shifting out the club as well. And actually for probably a fair amount of money too. So, yeah, big summer coming up for sure.
Just before we go on to pre-season then, Steve, thoughts on that?
Yeah, for players I like to bring in, obviously the big fantasy football manager signing would be Ward-Prowse. I think most teams are snapping up anyway, but can you imagine him in our side? I know it's not you've got to play to his strengths, but I still have nightmares about that game now. His dead balls were frightening, weren't they? Every time that corner came in, every time the free kick. And maybe, I know we all bring up the Chris Wood scenario, but someone like Ward-Prowse would suit the Chris Wood, if that makes sense, because of the way he delivers the ball. Chris Wood would eat them up all day. That's the way Chris Wood plays, but we'd have to adapt our style of play then, because we're not a kind of team who whip balls in, and we haven't got that big target man, because Taiwo is more of the, on the floor, direct and runner players. But Ward-Prowse for me would be the fantasy side. And for me, I've mentioned it a few times, I like Jack Harrison from Leeds. I think he's versatile. I'm not maybe just saying as well, because he's one of them players, every time he plays against us, he gives us nightmares as well, doesn't he? He always plays well against us. He's another player to look at. I'm trying to think who else. I'm trying to think. Yeah, it's always easy, though, isn't it? You always think of the 3 teams that gone down, and you think, who could I cherry pick from them teams? But then you think, what makes me laugh a lot of the time is the 3 teams that go down, teams want to snap up, but you thinking, well, they weren't good enough to keep them teams up, and why are teams going after them? So, yes, obviously some players out there which are out of our bracket, like Harvey Barnes, Madison, they're going to go on to Newcastle and Spurs and them kind of teams. But yeah, for me, I'd probably go with like a Jack Harrison. But your point about the defensive midfield, I think we need to, which we found out this year, I think in the Premier League, you both agree the midfield is so key, isn't it? You know, how many times didn't we get that? We didn't get that balance in midfield right, did we? We just didn't get it right, and it found us out. You know, we were trying all different combinations. They weren't, you know, when Yates came back in, it made a difference. But then there's some games where he got found out. The midfield is so key to knit everything together between the attack and the defence. I think that midfield, I think we still lack. I think you touched on it, Jay. I think we need a dynamic midfielder, I think, who, if you want to get on the ball and spray the ball around, maybe like a Ward-Prowse, but I think he's out of our price range. But yeah, that's my opinion on that. So, sorry, what was the other question you had, Jay?
I was just going to talk about pre-season.
All right, okay.
Pre-season. So I'll ask you now then, Steve. What are your thoughts on pre-season? And this is the last question of the show. It's obviously the first time for the Premier League era, of this era anyway, that we've had a full pre-season. We'll have an opportunity longer than 3 weeks for our players to train together and get used to each other. So what are your thoughts on the fixtures they've announced so far?
Yeah, well, can we just run them through them quick? It's PSV, isn't it? We got Notts County.
Frankfurt before that.
Yeah. Any others have been announced?
We've got
Rennes.
French team. Yeah.
Yeah, Rennes at St George's Park.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think it's PSV, Frankfurt, Rennes, Notts County, and that's it at the moment.
Yeah, I think another 1 or 2 will be thrown in there. I think to give. Do you remember last year we played that Notts game? Was it? And he gave some of the fringe players a run out. I think it'll be another game like that where he will look at some players, maybe. Because some of the names you've mentioned, I agree, like the Panzos, the Jada, Laria, they'd be moved on. But then it might be a player that might surprise us. He might want to look at. You just don't know. We don't know what Cooper's thinking. You know, he may have had his scouts looking out to these loan players and going, do you know what? There's something in this boy we could look at. Nurture him, bring him on. He might offer us something. We don't know. It could come left field, you know. But yeah, I think there'll be another game thrown in there. It might be against like a League 2 side, maybe a League 1 championship, maybe. But yeah, it goes back full circle to what we said in the beginning. It'd be nice come the first game where we got a few signs in, maybe Henderson, and we can start seeing, you know, what's to come. Because what we don't want is coming near the end of the transfer window and then we just see an influx of players and we got to bed them in. And next thing, we're playing Arsenal away. And then we're going to watch Arsenal. We got like 5 new signings. They don't know each other. And that's the thing. I'd rather get it done early and then bed them in. And yeah, if we sign someone on the last day, even better. Because you're always going to sign 1 or 2, but don't sign like 5 or 6 towards the end and then we just like got a new team again. We need to move on from them days.
Well, it's going to be an exciting pre-season. Me and Dore will be going to Frankfurt. Well, I don't know if Dore's doing Frankfurt yet. I'm definitely doing PSV. Got it all booked. So let me know. If you're doing PSV away, let me know. It's my birthday weekend. So you can buy me a drink. I'd like that. Thank you. At the moment, it's just coffee, but you can buy me a drink then. And I'll also be doing Frankfurt as well. So let me know if you're about. Give us a comment down below. Rads, your thought on pre-season and us having that full pre-season?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, how the quality of pre-season teams has gone up all of a sudden, you know, from what we've been playing in recent years. And yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I always like pre-season because it's like, you know, you're literally preparing for the season and there's always like players coming in and out and you're playing some different teams from around Europe, which for us is rare, so it'd be good. You know, you got some good teams there in Frankfurt and PSV, both abroad. The Rennes game would be obviously behind closed doors. And, you know, Notts, I'm sure, will be a totally different kind of test. I'm looking forward to going to that one. And hopefully there'll be another one announced at least. Because I think, there's quite a big gap between Notts and the PSV game. So I'll be very surprised if there's not another game at least thrown in there. Maybe another one, like we say, to play a few of the fringe players in. And I doubt there'll be one at the City Ground. It'll probably be a local side, maybe. I know we had Burton last year, didn't we? So something like that possibly could be added in. But yeah, it's always a good chance, isn't it, to nurture your team and try out some new players and try out some fringe players, see whether they've got anything left in them. So yeah, even though it's not the actual season, I'm looking forward to seeing how we all get on and how we're looking come Arsenal away from home.
Well, exciting times, tough fixtures, but nonetheless, it will be an exciting season. And I'm looking forward to pre-season going away and spending an 18th birthday over in the Netherlands. Wow, I wonder why. What a brilliant place. Don't forget, catch up here on DoreOnTour tomorrow night, 9:15. Kevin Campbell will be on talking with Dore about all things Forest. And I'm sure Kev will mention something about Everton or Arsenal maybe. But the main talking point is going to be Nottingham Forest. So do stick around tomorrow, 9:15. I will be at the Notts County game against Forest. So hopefully see some of you there. Let me know down in the comments if you're going to PSV or Frankfurt. It'd be great to meet some of you and meet you throughout the season as well. So thank you all for listening. Steve, Rads, thank you for joining. It's been an absolute pleasure bringing you this. And thank you to Dore as well for giving me the opportunity to host tonight. I hope you've all enjoyed this discussion. Remember to leave your comments, subscribe and like, and tweet us on Twitter if you'd like as well to give your thoughts further on this. So thank you all very much for listening. Do take care now and see you very soon. Goodbye.